Hello and welcome to the WARC Podcast. My name's David Tiltman and today we are talking about, all things marketing effectiveness and more specifically, what it takes to apply all the theory within a global marketing operation. Joining us today is Sorin Patilinet, who spent more than 13 years at Mars building an effectiveness operation and more recently has worked in a similar role at PepsiCo. He calls himself an effectiveness engineer, and we'll be diving into that in the chat. Now, Sorin recently turned all that experience into a book called simply Marketing Effectiveness. So we thought we'd bring him on to explain his view of the topic and what it looks like from the client side. We'll be covering the big ideas that change his view of advertising, why marketers need to understand engineers, and how areas like product and pricing fit in. And of course, what he learned on the inside. We'll talk to Sorin in a moment, but first, a word from our sponsors.
Lions Learning doesn't just teach, it transforms. Like the Master of Advertising Effectiveness led by James Herman, which gives you the evidence-based principles to create campaigns that deliver commercial results. This 6-week online program equips you with a complete understanding of effectiveness principles that make your work more consistent and successful. The October cohort is filling fast. Ready to go? Visit learning.lions.co today.
Sorin, welcome to the WARC Podcast.
Thank you, David, for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Let's just get straight into it and into your background, because I use that term effectiveness engineer up at the top. And I think you've got a sort of slightly unusual background for somebody in marketing. And just explain a little bit about how you got to where you are now and that sort of engineering framing.
So my background is, I'm very proud of the fact that I've studied engineering. I'm a telecommunication engineer graduate, but I fell in love with advertising while studying engineering, and I wanted to give it a shot. And immediately after school, I joined the marketing leadership program for British American Tobacco and never looked back. 20 years since, I've only had marketing roles, marketing analytics, and more recently, marketing insights and effectiveness roles.
Was there a moment where you suddenly realized you wanted to switch gear?
Yeah, I think there was a moment. I look back at it, and I actually reference it in my book. There was an event called the Night of Ad Eaters that was an in-person event that had a very simple premise. You go into a cinema and you watch ads from the evening till the morning. There is a lot of fun. There's concerts next to it, but it was primarily a celebration of different cultures, how brands express emotions through advertising. And for someone that grew up in a communist regime in Romania, this happened immediately after the fall of the communism, when brands, or Western brands, were very much sought. And it was a way for me to learn about the world, to learn about brands. And it planted a seed, certainly. And I fell in love with advertising, and I wanted to make better marketing, and to help build better brands.
So, fast forward through a sort of very successful career on the client side and in sort of research and effectiveness operations. And we'll talk about that in more detail as we go through. But I guess if you fast forward to now, what was your motivation for writing the book we referenced at the start?
So yeah, I'm very proud to have spent a big part of the second half of last year to write this book on marketing effectiveness. And the main reason I wrote it is that I've sensed a gap in the knowledge space around marketing effectiveness. I am standing on the shoulder of giants, no doubt. There are amazing academics. There are amazing thought leaders coming from agencies and research organizations that have led this conversation. You know them much better. Ritz and
you
Sharp.
Feature some of them in the book, don't you? You've got people like Karen Nelson.
Absolutely. So I'm not trying to undermine their work, but I felt that the voice of the brand is muted. Brands are not typically present except for some conference stages, but there's not that many perspectives of how to apply the thinking of the marketing effectiveness gurus, let's say, into the real world. And I I learned that there is a difference. There is a difference between the theory and the practice. And I also wanted to write a book that would have been the book I would have wanted to read 15 years ago. It's not a very complicated book. It doesn't have like formulas and extremely complex, like say, academic style of writing. It's a very practical summary of key learnings and insights that I've collected throughout my time.
And one point you make very sort of strongly, and I think it is a point sort of really worth making, though it sounds obvious, but these two things are often conflated, is there is a difference between marketing effectiveness and advertising effectiveness. And when you're in the client side, that distinction is very important. So just explain a little bit to us about that.
Absolutely. I think everywhere, I think because of the role of the marketing functions in large organization has shifted and has focused on communications, because the solutions that are mostly available in the research space are skewed towards understanding the impact of advertising, understanding the impact of media channels. I felt that the majority of the conversation is around that topic, while in fact lots of MMM studies have told us that the impact of media is between 5 and 10% of the sales of a typical brand during a given year. There are bigger levers that you can or cannot touch. There is baseline, there are promotions, there's distribution, there's pricing. So going back a little bit to the 4Ps idea, I felt that I needed to give a bit more weight to all the levers that marketeers have to touch. And it's right. Maybe in some companies you don't have control over pricing. Maybe in some companies you don't have, as a marketeer, control over the product pipeline. Maybe that's more R&D. But at least being aware and questioning those decisions, I think it's what will make you a more effective marketer.
Fantastic. Okay, let's get into this idea of effectiveness engineering. And you said yourself you're an engineer by background, so this is a sort of natural space for you. But I think the point you make in the book, which is really interesting, is that there is an engineering mindset that dominates a lot of companies and a lot of the senior ranks of companies, and often marketers don't gel with that. So just talk to me a little bit about that sort of tension, how you've seen it play out in your career.
So I was doing some research for the book, and I was quite shocked to find out that if you look at the top 10 companies by market capitalization, 9 out of 10 are led by engineers. Yes, there is a bias coming from the majority of those companies being tech companies, but it's not just tech. So definitely engineers have they're hitting above their fair share in terms of leadership. And I started to ask myself, why is that? And looking back also at what I learned in university, it's not necessarily the topic of engineering that you learn, but it's the way of thinking. And that way of thinking is a structured thinking, going from A to B in a very strict manner, setting hypotheses, testing those hypotheses, and then making decisions based on those results. I also feel that marketing for a long time has been the territory of has been seen as a department of, let's say, clowns, colorful, loud, on stages. No, because I was also seeing myself like that, and I think it's completely wrong. It's a wrong perception. I think the best marketeers that I've met are the ones who know how to use the consumer insight to implement those insights into the right decisions and to test thoroughly their hypothesis. So I don't believe in the extroverted marketeer, but I really think that let's say introvert or data-driven marketeers are the one that are winning. And Why? Because we can't all be engineers. We can't go back to school and study engineering. I've tried in my book to select a few topics, a few engineering principles that could apply to different levers of the marketing process, from strategy to pricing, product to communication as well. I'm not ignoring that big topic. And I think what came out was a very practical way of using like real life principle of engineering into marketing.
You talk a little bit about the big ideas that sort of changed the way you thought about marketing, and as you say, standing on the shoulders of giants, but there were certain sort of big principles that you learned along the way that you share in the book. So I think there's sort of 4 of them. So just explain quickly what those 4 are, so we sort of kind of know where you're coming from, where your sort of thinking sits.
Absolutely. So I think if you're referring right, I think I'm mostly considering the learnings of Byron Sharp, Ritson, Binet, and Karen Nelson-Field. Double jeopardy, the long and the short of it, the role of attention. These are all, and not to forget the importance of distinctive assets from Jenny.
That's Jenny Romani from also from Aaron Bass.
Yeah. I think these 4 ideas are widely publicized, are widely debated. I don't know if within organizations they are widely understood and implemented. So just the fact that you have a conference and you have Jenny presenting at that conference doesn't mean that everybody in that organization is aware of the concept and understand it. And while I wholeheartedly agree with all of them, there are different moments in the life of a marketeer when you have some pressures. Let's say when the shit hits the fan. When those principles start to be questioned by different functions in the organization. So,
and that's true inside companies as well. You know, not everybody understands these principles within a company.
Not everybody, and not every time, I would say, because there are moments of high pressure. There are moments of mostly budget restrictions when running research is no longer a calm practice, I would say. Yes, you can measure the power of your distinctive assets throughout the year, but when your research budget is cut in half and you need to make tough choices, maybe you will stop doing that measurement. Is that right? I don't know. Is that wrong? But it's the real life. So I'm trying to bring in my book an approach on how to think about these big principles, or those 4 big ideas, within the limitations of real life, not in a perfect world of availability of data, availability of budget, and willingness of everybody to cooperate with you.
And you know, in the situation we've been in a lot of companies for the last 4 or 5 years, in this sort of low growth post-COVID environment, I mean, budgets are always under pressure, aren't they? I don't think there are many marketers out there with sort of, oh yeah, it's great, I just get to spend whatever I want.
Budgets, and also I found it weird that also acceptance of those ideas is not uniform. I mean, we've been playing in this space for too long, I would say, and I think for us, like even like an idea like the double jeopardy, is understood, it's clear. Now, that idea in Mars, we had to train every year through the organization, not just to the new joiners, but also to people who got a little bit tired of the idea and wanted to try something new. So there is just the fact that double jeopardy exists doesn't mean it exists in real life.
It's a really interesting point there. I mean, it's part of the problem that some of these principles feel alien to the way marketing is practiced. Is it that there's sort of, it feels like it's like we're trying to introduce something that seems to run counter to the way, to sort of what a lot of people think is the business as usual of a marketer?
Yes, and I feel that the principles are very boring. If you're in the same role and you are told you need to reach all category buyers every single year, in year 3, someone will be like, "Oh, can't we do a loyalty program just to see if it works, or just for a change?" No, you can't, because that's not how it works. So that's not how you can be effective. So those are some interesting dynamics that I had the pleasure to play with, and it happens at different levels in the organization. It's not just junior people. I think it's also very senior people that I would say get bored of the same routine over and over, and we should not get bored, because I truly believe that marketing science is a science.
Yeah.
That those ideas have been proven, stood the test of time, and we just need to find ways to not be bored with them.
Do you know what? It's really interesting you say that, because as many listeners of this podcast will know, we at WARC run the Creative Impact content stream in Cannes Lions, and that's all about effectiveness, what's working, why is it working, all of those sorts of things. What we've found over the course of doing that over 3 years is there's an effectiveness hardcore. Yeah, there's a and that, I do think that's growing. I think the people who are naturally interested in these sorts of topics is growing as a percentage of the festival audience, for percentage of the industry overall. But then there's a lot of other people who are, could be curious, but are maybe sort of put off by the way it's traditionally been presented. So we've had this sort of internal mantra: we need to make effectiveness interesting, which I think is just goes to exactly what you're saying. Is like, okay, a lot of these principles are fundamental, but actually, we need to do a good job of marketing them ourselves as the people who are passionate and evangelists for this kind of thing, and not assume that just because we've got some good charts that people are going to go and take it away and adopt it into their everyday jobs.
Great marketing starts with great insights, and that's what TMRE, the market research event, is all about. October 28th to 30th in Las Vegas, you'll spot what's next, turn data into action, and connect with leaders shaping how brands understand their customers. Get your pass at informaconnect.com/TMRE and save 25% with code WARC25.
I'm going to dive into your specific experience at Mars in a few moments, but I do want to touch on that sort of 4 Ps point, and the idea that there is a sort of effectiveness framework that brings all these sorts of levers together, and it's not just about the sort of advertising lever. You talk specifically in the book about product and pricing effectiveness and what role these play in the mix. I know this is a sort of a thing we always come back to, but we don't need to redefine the 4 Ps. The 4 Ps are still good. From your point of view, the 4 Ps remain a good starting point, right? In terms of understanding the levers you have to actually make change happen.
100%. So I almost think of them as like a holistic approach to marketing. And again, I'm trying to steer people away to only think about their campaign and the result of their pretest as a measure of effectiveness. And I've heard many people say that that's marketing effectiveness. That's not marketing effectiveness. But I've also seen at Mars and in other organizations how an approach that diagnoses brand performance across multiple levers, almost in a way that taps into all the different elements that can impact the performance of the brand, from how you set your strategy, from the type of audience, the type of target that you the type of positioning that you select, from the product proposition, the performance of the product in that specific category against the competitors, the super hot topic of pricing power and price effectiveness. those are elements that I feel we are tackling them in isolation, and I have not seen yet like a framework that looks at them holistically.
That's what you've tried to introduce in the.
That's what I'm trying to introduce here. I don't know if it's 100% foolproof, but it's a start. But the idea is to enable a more broader conversations when you diagnose performance of marketing, and some levers have interactions with each other. Some levers are more important than others, but ignoring some of them is not a good strategy.
Let's take product as an example. I'm interested in how this has worked in your career. What role does the marketer have around products? They're often, I guess the sort of caricature is that they're just at the receiving end, that someone else in the business sort of creates something and the marketers have to market it. How do you sort of change that or come up with a fundamentally different relationship?
So I am a little bit biased by my background in FMCG because that's where I was trained and that's where most of my experience comes from. And in most fast-moving consumer goods, marketing is still the function that has the closest relationship with your customer. And in theory, that's where the insight should come, and in theory that insight should inform your product development pipeline. But yes, there are situations where supply or a certain kind of availability of materials can dictate what's your next product evolution. But the most successful products that I've seen are following like a deep consumer insight. So one example would be a smaller brand, I would say, that has been in the news recently and has been recently acquired by PepsiCo, and that brand is Poppi.
Yeah.
Poppi is a perfect example of really trying to solve a problem, a need, a functional need that users of carbonated soft drinks had to get an offer that is less sugar and more with some health benefits. And that definitely played on a trend that it's growing, and that offer came from a consumer insight. I'm sure that the product was not developed and then they were looking for the insights to come. So I think when it comes to product, I even came up with a framework in which I measure the effectiveness of the product.
And just explain that quickly. I mean,
yeah. I think more details are in the book, but in principle, the three areas where I look when it comes to products are the function of the product, how good it delivers on the need of the user, the innovation, because without innovation, I don't think you can win today. So how new features or how impressive is the offer compared to everything else that's available in the market. You could call it distinctiveness as well, if you want, but it's really related to the product, not the communication. And then lastly is packaging, especially in fast-moving consumer goods. The power of the packaging is unbelievable, and it is whether we like it or not. We spend less time on packaging than we spend on communications. And people see 3 seconds of our ads and they play with the pack in their hand every morning if it's about a Quaker Oats cereal. So I'm not advocating here for any kind of change of packaging. I'm very conservative in that space, but packaging is one of the biggest areas of brand communication that you have, and you should leverage that for an effective product.
Do you think that's not appreciated? Do you think, because there's always these sort of, companies that change the packaging. I mean, we keep seeing them on LinkedIn all the time, oh my God, the brand XYZ has changed its packaging and I hate it. Is that a reflection of a sort of lack of understanding of the strategic role of packaging?
I don't know why everybody changes the pack all the time. Not everybody, some people. I go back to my days in British American Tobacco when, due to regulation, packaging was the only area where at that time was available for us to innovate. So therefore, we were developing limited edition packs. I would say 4 times a year we were changing the pack. And looking back, I think we were doing that just because we were bored, just because we had nothing else to do, and because we wanted to confuse the user when they were in front of a shelf, because that's what changing packaging does. So I think that that period taught me a very strong lesson that unless you have a legal need to play with packaging, you should not play with packaging. And I think that's echoed in academic research that I later found out now. But packaging is hyper important, and the distinctiveness of that packaging on shelf, but also online, is what creates value these days. And when I talk about packaging effectiveness, I talk about the need to go really broad when it comes to research. I've seen the industry going very much into an AI-based measurement of packaging, like attention frames that try to predict where people will look at, and if they look at the logo, that's fine. I think that's not enough. I'm a huge fan of simulated test markets, which can be more expensive than AI research, but that's how I would test packaging in market, where people would see that pack in on a real shelf, like they would do. Unfortunately, because budgets are limited, because everything we do needs to be done at less cost, we tend to go on the easy route rather than the more qualitative route.
The point about research is interesting, and we're going to come on to sort of research in a moment. But I just want to touch on pricing before that, because obviously that's another P, and one where there's a lot of excitement recently. You know, this sort of connection between this sort of through line, I guess, from communications to brand equity to pricing power. What's your take on this? How seriously should marketers be taking a concept like pricing power, and to what extent can you build that into effectiveness models, whether that's around specifically advertising effectiveness or more broadly marketing effectiveness?
So, as you rightly said, it is a hot topic. It feels like everybody has listened to Warren Buffett when he said that his main criteria to invest in a company is the ability to
Guilty as charged.
Power.
I've used that clip in a lots of presentations.
And I think the way we understood that as an industry, and I'll generalize here, even though I don't think it's 100% right. Whenever we talk about price power, we basically say, how high can we go? Let's just get the price up, and let's see how much elasticity allows us to go up. When I think of pricing, I think of pricing as a very strategic lever, playing with premiumness and value for money lines within your product portfolios to optimize that bottom line. So I don't think I have the answer on how to navigate price power, but I tend to feel that we oversimplify price power into this idea of how high can we go.
It's really interesting. I was talking to a marketer earlier this year, and they were being pitched by an agency for run this brand campaign and you'll be able to put your price up. And it does feel like we've taken what is quite an exciting sort of area to understand and sort of absorb and sort of boiled it down to quite a simplistic sort of cause and effect, where there's obviously many other sort of inputs into things like pricing power that are not going to come out of communication. But it feels like we haven't quite got that right yet.
No, and I think there's also some consumer dynamics which we probably ignore. We've never lived in a world where it's easier to compare prices than today. every time I try to book a hotel, it takes me like literally 30 seconds to check 3 different websites on that same hotel and then go to the hotel websites and make the decision. So consumers are more and more difficult to fool, I would say, with a different price. So access to data, access to comparison websites is fantastic. And that's why maybe you should think about pricing a bit more complex than just how high can you go.
Yeah, interesting. But again, the positive thing about this is that a proper understanding of pricing power relies on your understanding of the consumer. So it just comes back to, as you said earlier, the best marketers being the ones that have that sort of deep understanding of the customers they're serving. Okay, let's talk about your specific experience, particularly at Mars. I think we first met when you were at Mars, and you spent a lot of time really building quite an impressive centralized effectiveness operation there. Now, I think the focus there, if I'm right, was more on the sort of media and advertising side, the communication side, rather than the things we've just been talking about, but I'm interested in how you evolved that approach and again, how you put the sort of thinking that we've been talking about into some sort of practice.
So I look back with a lot of joy to what we've built together with my team at Mars and with the leaders of that organization. We started very nimble. We started with the idea to measure the sales impact of advertising and with some principles that we never looked back from. And those principles was that we trusted behavioral measurement above anything else than, let's say, declarative, that we were there for the long run. We wanted to have a consistency in measurement. We didn't want to change methods every second year because we knew that consistency brings us the scale that creates the key beliefs and the strategic insights that guide future decisions.
Just talk to me about the types of data, and you sort of really emphasized types of research you emphasized, and how that you sort of fit that into a framework.
So we really focused on quality of data. We knew that we could ask people whether they liked our ads, and that was one data point, and we could easily get it, and it was at scale. But we really dig deep to understand how can we match sales data with real life exposure data. And that's what you can get from various constructs of single source panels. And that enabled us to have a real read of the impact on sales of every single impression for our ads and our competitors' ads. Later on, we felt the need to be more agile and be more closer to the moment of development of the campaigns rather than post-campaign measurement. And we delved into neurosciences. We tried to understand how attention, how emotions, how memory encoding works. And we've used facial images on consumers that acknowledge their participation in that research to measure second by second attention and second by second emotions throughout the viewing of an ad in context. And that allowed us to go to levels of optimizations for creative that was unheard of before.
And how did you get buy-in for all of that? We talked earlier about how budgets are always under pressure. There's always something that needs to be cut. How did you get that sort of internal approval for this like long-run investment in research and data?
I'd love to think that was all my success, but it's definitely not. I think I was modeling that success based on the senior leaders that I have had the pleasure to work with. People like Bruce McCall, who retired now, but is still quoted as the Kickstarter of the marketing science practice at Mars. Jane Wakely, with whom I've worked for years,
And at
leading
PepsiCo is too. She's a PepsiCo as well now, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. She was a massive supporter and still is a supporter of embedding marketing science in the culture of the organization. So I would say that it's less here about the choice of the specific model that you're using, but it's more about how do you create the incentives for the organization to make better decisions. And that's what she was always pushing me for. And that's what I think made her successful and made the companies that she worked for very successful. So I was very lucky to have like-minded leaders that basically spoke up about marketing science and put effectiveness in their vocabulary, especially when they were speaking in the boardroom. It was very clear that the role of marketing was improved in the leadership team because we were using hard data. We were not using jargon. We were using real measures of sales impact and ROI every time when we were talking about marketing success. And it gave the perception, and it was a true perception, that we are on top of our game, that we're not trying just to make a more colorful ad.
Yeah. And just talking about the sort of, I guess, that virtuous circle internally, where once you start getting success, it starts driving better internal behaviors. Just talk to me a little bit about how you saw that from the inside.
It was fascinating because I had the opportunity to see that for a large number of years, I would say. And I got to see how a single insight was driving the organization to think differently about communication. And I'm sorry that I'm only giving communication examples here, because that was the core.
We know why. Yeah,
the role. For example, one of the challenges that many companies are facing is the explosion of non-working media costs.
Yeah.
At the expense of working media. So of course we all want to have our dollars reaching our consumers, but sometimes you just need to develop much more content. And we've used data and a continuous banging on the same message that creative wear-out doesn't exist, for the single reason that we wanted to reduce non-working media. And the measure of success of the implementation of that insight.
Sorry, let me just to understand that. We say non-working media, you're talking about asset creation. Production of new stuff. And what you're finding, if I'm interpreting you right, is that actually the stuff you're producing, if it was high quality enough, doesn't sort of wear out, so doesn't need replacing.
Yeah, the good stuff stays good for long. The bad stuff, it's taken off immediately when you have a good measurement solution. And this allows you to fix a problem that's bigger than how many ads do we produce. And that problem is what's the percentage of working versus non-working spend, which is an insight that a CFO cares deeply about.
Yeah.
I don't think the CFO cares about the number of assets of campaigns that we produce, but working versus non-working is something that they can easily understand and empathize with.
Fantastic. We're nearly out of time, but just tell me where you want this to go, this sort of discussion to go next. We've talked about making effectiveness more interesting. We've talked about moving from the what to the how. What do you want to sort of achieve, firstly with this book and with all the work you're doing?
As I transitioned from Mars to PepsiCo, I realized that while the what of marketing effectiveness is the same, the how, the implementation, the transition from insights to how to apply a certain insights into the culture of that organization is totally different. And if you multiply that by the number of brands and number of companies, I'm assuming that marketing effectiveness could have different explanations for different companies. And I think it would be fascinating to hear more the voice of the brand in this conversation, because one size does not fit all when it comes to marketing effectiveness. So the future will be of how you manage to implement these ideas inside the culture of your organizations and inside the decision frameworks in your organizations, which are, I can tell you, very different.
Well, that seems like the perfect place to leave it. So a reminder, the book is called Marketing Effectiveness. It is available, pretty much wherever you get your books. You will also find it across Sorin's LinkedIn posts. So do look out for that. That's all for today's episode. If you like what you heard, please do follow us on your podcasting platform of choice. And if you really liked it, please do leave us a review. Until next time, thanks for listening.